While your happiness largely depends on genetic factors, there are at least 8 things you can do that will actually help support it a lot. And the first is self-compassion. When people talk about self-esteem, they're talking about the overall evaluation you have of yourself. If you don't think you're that great, you're going to have low self-esteem, which is associated with depression and anxiety. High self-esteem, while it is correlated with happiness, is also correlated with narcissism. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is the tendency to mindfully treat yourself kindly, unconditionally. And self-compassion has the benefits of high self-esteem, but it doesn't come with narcissism. A lot of people are hesitant to adopt self-compassion because they think it'll kill their motivation. If you accept yourself unconditionally, then why would you try to change? But it turns out the opposite is true, and I made a whole video explaining why that is. The second tip for improving happiness is meditation. While it used to be seen as either a religious ritual or a pseudoscience, recent research has shown that meditating even just 10 to 30 minutes a day can really improve not only your happiness, but your self-control and all sorts of mental health outcomes. Meditation has even been shown to reduce your risk of cancer. And this is true of many different kinds of meditation. If you close your eyes and focus on your breathing, if you try to think about nothing, you do a loving kindness meditation, or if you do a body scan, those all help with this kind of thing. Closely related to meditation, the third tip I have to improving your happiness is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is basically the ability to experience what you're experiencing in a non-judgmental way. People who are mindful are very aware of what is happening to them and how they're perceiving it. You can look at the things that are happening to you without judging whether they're good, bad, boring, or not. If you're able to do this, your happiness improves tremendously. One thing that actually kind of terrifies me is the hedonic treadmill, and it's the tendency for basically nothing to make you happy in the long run. If you get a new job or a new apartment, you're probably just going to be happy about it for 3 months, and then you're back to where you started. But all of the things in this list are exceptions to this, including friendship. When you make a new friend, instead of being happy for just 2 or 3 months, you're actually happy for as long as that friend is in your life. And the more interactions you have with friends and family that care about you, the happier you'll be. My 5th tip for being happy is to practice art. Having some sort of art form in your life is really good for you. It can give you a sense of self-efficacy, it can induce flow, and it can actually quell your fears of death. One thing that generally makes people more satisfied with their life that you wouldn't really expect or think that much about is your commute to work. People who have long commutes to work, especially if they drive alone, are a lot less happy than people who have shorter commutes, and a lot less happy than people who travel by foot or by bike. If instead of driving to work alone, you can walk with a friend or even just drive with a friend, and you can minimize the amount of time it takes to get to work, then you'll actually improve your life a lot. The 7th tip I have is to either go to therapy or adopt a therapeutic mindset. Psychotherapy is often used for depression, anxiety, and even more extreme mental disorders, but it can actually help you even if you don't go to therapy. You can actually learn a lot and improve your quality of life just by reading about some of the philosophical frameworks behind some modes of therapy. Self-help books and reading about cognitive behavior therapy or rational emotive behavior therapy can really make it a lot easier to cope with all sorts of stressors in life. And just reading about that kind of thing or watching YouTube videos about that kind of thing can have an impact and is probably good for just about anybody. But if it either doesn't help or doesn't help enough, therapy is always a really good option. And it's really important to recognize that going to a therapist doesn't mean you're crazy, insane, or weak, it just means that you're improving yourself. People go to medical doctors to prevent or even just get advice about physical illness, and it's okay to go to a therapist to talk about or prevent mental illness. And one of the most important things you can do for your mental health is to work on your physical health. If you exercise for about half an hour, 5 days a week, even to the extent where you're just raising your heart rate a little bit, that's going to make a big difference in your life. Nutrition is also really important because happiness is basically a chemical thing that happens in your brain, and if your body doesn't have the chemicals it needs, it's not going to produce the chemicals you want. It's also really important to get good sleep. Getting good sleep does usually mean getting about 8 hours of sleep, but that varies a lot from person to person. Regardless of how much sleep you need, it's really good to stay consistent with when exactly you're getting your sleep. Brains have a really hard time adjusting to changes in sleep schedule. So if when you go to bed and wake up varies every day, then your brain doesn't know when it needs to be alert, and it's not going to be operating at maximum efficiency. So practice self-compassion, meditate, practice mindfulness, spend time with friends, do art, make your commute to work efficient, practice a therapeutic way of thinking and coping with things, and definitely stay healthy. If you do all these things, you will have a much more satisfying life than if you don't. I'll post links in the description to videos about each one of these tips in more depth. And if you want to support me making videos like this, definitely support me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe. I hope these tips can make a little difference in your life and make a few people happy. Thanks for watching.